So as the Trump administration touts a lower than expected inflation rate nationwide, new analysis from the White House claims inflation in red states is significantly lower than in blue states. Fox Business correspondent Darren Botello has that story.
Good afternoon, Bill. A new report out from the White House Economic Council showing a disparity between red states and blue states as far as inflation goes. You can probably guess what the report says as far as which states are progressing faster as far as inflation. According to the data, conservative states are seeing prices rise slower than their liberal neighbors. Conservative states are seeing prices rise at 2.5%, liberal states at 3%. Cost differences cited as a potential reason for people moving to states with cheaper prices.
You have seen there's a lot of data that suggests there's been massive migration away from blue states into red states, in part because these cost of living issues, which certainly are policy related.
And the gap is even wider when you look at the bills hitting families every single month. Energy prices, for example, 5.2% in blue states versus 3.5% in red states. Transportation, 2.5% in blue states versus just 0.7% in red states. The administration says states pushing for renewable energy, we're talking wind and solar, are sending those prices even higher.
If you have things like wind and solar and some other alternative sources which are not reliable and are very expensive, they need to be massively subsidized by the government for them even to be partially effective. You are going to be paying much higher costs.
Meanwhile, President Trump in the White House taking a victory lap today after we saw the economy grow by 4.3% in the third quarter. Bill?
And a lot to dive into on this topic, so we're going to bring in Luke Ball, Republican strategist and CEO of Compass Strategies, as well as Doug Schoen, Democrat strategist and former advisor to President Bill Clinton. Doug, Luke, great to see you guys. Thanks for joining us on this Christmas Eve. Doug, I want to start with you.
Yeah.
We heard in Darren's report there, this report from the White House Economic Council claiming that inflation is significantly lower in red states than it is in blue states. How do you read that, and do you see that as a potential political liability for Democrats heading into the midterms next year?
You know, I think from what we saw in the November elections and what the polling is showing us is voters across the country, regardless of location or party, are holding the administration accountable for inflation as they did Joe Biden. Now, it's certainly true that liberal states, particularly those with big city mayors, have much more problems with governance than do red states. And I think it's certainly the case that the quality of life frequently in red states is better than in blue states, especially blue state cities. But from every indication we have from the polls and every indication we have from the Virginia election and the New Jersey election this November, voters are holding the Trump administration accountable, and I think there's a real fear in the administration they could lose the midterm elections, especially control of the House.
And Luke, Republicans have been more than happy to remind Americans of where the inflation rate was at its peak under the Biden administration. I mean, take a look at this data. Back in June of 2022, that inflation rate peaked at 9.1%. Americans were feeling that. It is now down to 2.7% as of last month. Luke, the question for you is, the Trump administration has really been pushing this messaging about affordability. It's a messaging war with Democrats. Are Republicans winning that war right now?
I'm not sweating as a Republican strategist, and I call balls and strikes when it comes to economic data because I want my party to win. This was a massive win when the GDP numbers came out. The 4-point and some change percentage point of GDP growth is enormous, the record low inflation rate. And we also see that this data was driven by consumer confidence and consumer spending. That's enormous. So if you're getting data from pollsters who are saying that the American people are not confident in the economy, but then you have record spending like 203 million Americans spending in that 5-day period between Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and month-over-month retail sales hitting 4.1% consistently in the United States. I think maybe the same pollsters who said Hillary Clinton was going to sweep in 2016 are doing the same data polling as the ones who are saying that consumer confidence is not strong. I love when President Trump beats expectations of the so-called experts, and this data is strong. I don't concede that the Virginia and New Jersey elections, which are purple and blue states respectively, are any indication of the midterms. And it's not, what have you done for me with the American people? It's what have you done for me lately?
And let's talk about that consumer sentiment, because to your point, you're getting all sorts of great economic numbers. People are feeling good. GDP is looking great. Inflation is low. But apparently Americans just aren't feeling it. Take a look at the consumer sentiment index, almost a 20-point drop this year since it was first measured in January. It's at 53.3. Just to put that in a little perspective, that's close to the all-time low of 50, which was back in June of 2022 when inflation was at 9.1%. So, Doug, where's the disconnect here? Great economic numbers, but Americans not feeling it.
Look, I don't disagree, Bill, with what Luke said about the economic data. He's certainly right. But the perceptual data, which I think drives voter attitudes, shows the president with an approval at or below 40%, and on the economy even lower, around 36%. That's why he's doing the affordability tour. That's why we're seeing so much emphasis on prices and the cost of living. So, yeah, there's a GOP argument, but I'd rather be the Democrats going into the 2026 midterms than I would the Republicans, because the midterm of a first term for a president is always challenging. I think this will be no different.
And Luke, got about 15 seconds left. Final word to you, and we'll take off.
I would submit the lingering economic problems that exist right now are kind of like blaming the firefighter for the work that the arsonist did. It's a big ship to turn around. I think President Trump has made significant progress, and by the midterm elections, I think Republicans will come out on top.
All right, Luke and Doug, we appreciate your time today. Got to leave it there, and Merry Christmas to both of you guys.
Merry Christmas.